There's a specific kind of frustration that only seasoned managers carry. It's not the hot-headed rage of a rookie who's in way over his head. It's not the deer-in-headlights panic of a coach who's flat out of ideas. No, this is colder. The razor-sharp disappointment of a man who has been around long enough to know exactly what he's looking at, and exactly what's just been taken from him. Carlos Queiroz is 73 years old, and he has coached at 5 World Cups. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United. He's been the head man for Portugal and Iran, steered Real Madrid, run South Africa, and now he's leading Ghana toward what could be the biggest result this young Black Stars side has ever seen. The man has, quite literally, seen it all. He has lived through 4 decades of officiating drama at the very top of the sport. So when he strolled into that post-match press conference, right after Ghana's scoreless tie with England in Foxborough, Massachusetts on Tuesday night, he locked eyes with a FIFA official sitting right there in the room and said this: "I'm not even sure VAR is still running at this World Cup. We technically have it, it works, allegedly. But I've got my doubts because there was a penalty, one they absolutely should have given Ghana. A stone-cold penalty against England, and once again, VAR apparently stepped out for a coffee. Now look, I enjoy a good coffee now and then, but that was a clear penalty and a straight red card. Anybody in here have any doubts?" Then he scanned the room full of reporters and added something that hit even harder than the complaint itself. "I'm sorry for the sarcasm," he said, "but if I say any of this for real, they'll fine me. So please, understand, I'm only joking." He was not joking, and every single person in that room knew it. So what is actually going on here? How did a scoreless draw in Massachusetts, a game England controlled with 79% possession, the most ever by a team that still failed to score at a World Cup in 60 years, turn into one of the biggest officiating firestorms of the entire tournament? Let's break down what really happened, because this is not some manager throwing a tantrum after a bad result. This is 2 separate moments in the same game, both involving England players, both unpunished, and both drawing agreement afterward from former pros who all said the same thing: something got missed. And both of them unfolded with the VAR booth switched on, fully staffed, and, in theory anyway, actually paying attention, which is exactly what makes this whole thing so maddening. The first flashpoint hit in the 66th minute. Ghana sub Prince Kwabena Adu, a guy who'd been on the field barely 10 minutes and instantly flipped the game's entire energy with his fearless, direct running, had the ball just outside England's box when keeper Jordan Pickford came charging out to meet him. The collision was right there for everyone to see. Adu went down. Queiroz's whole bench shot to their feet. But the ref, Honduras's Syed Martinez, gave England a free kick instead of penalizing Pickford. Queiroz's verdict in the presser was blunt. He called it a clear collision and said Pickford should have been shown the door. "No question about it," he said. But the second incident? That's the one that really lit the fuse. 13 minutes later, in the 79th minute, Adu burst into England's penalty area on what sure looked like a clear goal-scoring chance. Ezri Konsa, the Aston Villa centre-back, came flying in from behind. He didn't get the ball, he got the man. Plain as day on the replays, millions of people were watching at home, and yet, somehow, no penalty, no red card. VAR reviewed it, or was supposed to, and somehow found nothing worth stepping in for in either case. Then former England striker Wayne Rooney, watching from the broadcast booth, was among the voices saying Konsa took a massive gamble and clearly got the man, not the ball. Think about that. Wayne Rooney, an England icon, publicly admitting his own country's defender got lucky not to give away a penalty that would have flipped the entire match. And that is not some biased take from a Ghana fan. That's a sharp, experienced read in real time from a guy with absolutely zero reason to root for Ghana. Now, the VAR official in charge of reviewing both moments from the video center was an American, Armando Villarreal. And the man in the middle, the on-field referee, Syed Martinez of Honduras, was working his very first match involving either England or any African national team. Now, those credentials aren't a knock on him by themselves. Every ref has a first time, and Martinez showed up with a rising reputation across CONCACAF, having handled Gold Cup finals and Nations League finals. But put it all together, limited history with both teams, two hotly disputed moments, and a VAR review that basically shrugged and found nothing worth touching, and suddenly those officials are at the heart of a conversation way bigger than just one game. And here is where it gets really interesting. Because Queiroz's little coffee joke landed in a very specific context, this tournament, one that gives it real weight, it might not have carried anywhere else. See, this is not the first VAR controversy of the 2026 World Cup. It's not even the third. There was Switzerland against Qatar in week 1, where the deciding video evidence somehow never got shown to the public. There was Argentina versus Algeria, where Messi dodged a card for a challenge that respected analysts on the broadcast flat out said should have been red. Then came Algeria's formal written complaint, filed with FIFA up in Zurich. And now, England against Ghana, with 2 incidents inside 13 minutes, both falling England's way, both involving their opponent's single most dangerous man in the second half. And the thread running through every one of these? It's the exact pattern Queiroz called out with that sarcasm. Calls that favor the bigger, more commercially valuable nation. Calls that VAR reviews and somehow signs off on. Calls the entire soccer world stares at and says, with varying degrees of politeness, yeah, that doesn't look right. Queiroz knows precisely how this system works. He knows that if he says all of this with a straight face instead of wrapping it in a joke, he's staring down a fine from FIFA's disciplinary office. He told the room exactly that. Framing the criticism as a joke wasn't him backing down. Not even a little. It was a masterclass in saying the dangerous thing without handing FIFA a reason to open a case against him. The man is 73 years old. He's been to 5 World Cups, and he knows precisely where every line is drawn. So he walked his criticism right up to that line, dressed it in a coffee metaphor, and made absolutely sure every reporter in that room understood exactly what he meant. Now, to be fair, let's flip it and look at England's side of this. Because fairness means both teams get a voice. Thomas Tuchel, speaking afterward, admitted his side lacked a cutting edge and conceded the group has been a tough one. He said his players threw everything at it and competed with the right intensity, and he's hoping the fans don't lose faith. England piled up 19 shots on the night. They racked up 1.36 expected goals. They built chances that, on almost any other night, win you the game. Then there's Jude Bellingham, who had his own dust-up with Queiroz at halftime after a heavy chat stream, Opoku. Bellingham brushed it off as nothing more than competitive fire. He owned up to a silly tackle and said he and Queiroz actually share a lot of mutual respect. But that halftime clash adds its own flavor to the whole evening. The Ghana boss said Bellingham used a bad word. 1. In his words, not in the book of life. After the Ghana bench had protested the tackle, Bellingham said he recognized Queiroz from his Manchester United days and chalked the whole exchange up to pure competitiveness. Neither guy let it boil over. But the fact that it happened at all, on the same night as 2 disputed penalty calls and that VAR coffee press conference, makes England versus Ghana the juiciest single-match story of the tournament's entire second week. And here's the bigger issue Queiroz's words, however lightly tossed off, are really pointing at. The VAR system at this World Cup has now been publicly and seriously challenged by multiple coaches, multiple broadcasters, and an entire national federation, all inside 2 weeks. And each challenge looked a little different. Algeria put it in writing. Queiroz reached for sarcasm and a coffee metaphor. The pundits on the Argentina-Algeria broadcast just said it straight to camera. But the core claim underneath all of it is identical. The system isn't being applied consistently, and the inconsistency keeps tilting towards certain teams over others. And that is a serious accusation. One you don't make disappear just by writing off Queiroz's tone as sarcastic or his delivery as theatre. This is not some green manager making excuses. This is a man with 50 years in the game at the highest level, 5 World Cup cycles under his belt, and a crystal clear view of what he saw on that field, in Foxborough. He said it about as carefully as a man possibly can, while also making it obvious he knows the rules on what he's even allowed to say. The coffee line was, never the story. The decisions were the story. And yet, through all of it, Ghana sit in a genuinely remarkable spot. 4 points from 2 games, unbeaten, and on the doorstep of the World Cup round of 32, for the very first time since that magical quarter-final run in South Africa back in 2010. Their opening win over Panama and this draw with England were both built on exactly the tactical structure and counter-attacking discipline Queiroz has been perfecting his entire career. Next up, they face Croatia in Philadelphia in the final group game, knowing that a good result punches their ticket straight into the knockouts. Thomas Partey, who missed Ghana's opener because his Canadian visa got denied over an ongoing legal case in England, is cleared to play against Croatia. His return hands Queiroz a whole different level of midfield authority, and Adu, the sub right at the centre of both controversial moments, the guy whose fearless running rattled England's backline all night, has officially announced himself at this tournament as a player who genuinely changes games. So here's the question for you. Has the pattern of VAR calls at this World Cup hit the point where the system's credibility is truly on the line? Or do you think these controversies, real as they are, just reflect how brutally hard officiating is at this level, rather than anything actually systemic? And here's the one that matters most. Coming straight out of Foxborough. When Carlos Queiroz stared down a FIFA official in that press room and asked, in front of the entire global soccer media, whether VAR was even still working, then said he was only joking because otherwise they'd fine him. Does that really sound like a man just laughing off a tough night? Tell me what you think down below.